She cheated, so I turned a parking ticket into a prison sentence. We used to eat dinner on the floor because the table rocked if you breathed on it. She'd slide across the linoleum, pinch the wobble with her fingers, and say, "One day we'll laugh about this." I believed her. I worked late, picked up the shifts nobody wanted, paid the bills that came in like tides. She studied, or said she did. The first lie wasn't a word. It was a glow. Her phone lit the ceiling while she showered. Heart emojis, midnight plans, a name I didn't know. It wasn't a confession, it was a rehearsal. She came out in steam and said she was tired. I said nothing. Silence isn't surrender. It's a net you throw over the ocean and leave there until it fills with everything you were promised. She slept. I watched the messages roll in like a weather report. The next morning, she kissed my cheek and called me her rock. Rocks don't move. They don't warn you when the tide turns. A week later, I found the crack I needed. A thin envelope, crumpled under flyers and grocery receipts. One parking ticket. A red rectangle that called her by name for blocking a fire hydrant. $50. She dropped it on the counter. Forgot it existed. Forgot, like people do, that small debts are just the patient cousins of catastrophe. Most people would pay it and never think about it again. But most people aren't building endings. A thread is nothing until you pull it. I pulled. I read the plate, the officer's badge number, the location stamp tilted 3 degrees to the left. I learned the form's rhythm, the line breaks, the gray watermark that only shows under a kitchen lamp at 2 in the morning. I kept the original. I made copies that were almost polite. The system does the heavy lifting if you speak its language. I didn't shout. I typed. I asked questions no one had asked about a plate they had never looked at twice. I left voicemails from nowhere addresses. I submitted a correction that contradicted a correction I would submit 3 days later. Late fees bloom like mold when nobody opens the door. 1 fine became 5. 5 became a notice. The notice became a list with numbers that looked like phone bills from people who don't call home anymore. The plate didn't just belong to a careless driver. It belonged to a story that made the wrong kind of sense. Renewals that never happened. Tags that didn't match. Signatures that shook like hands after a lie. She scrolled in bed beside me and giggled at someone who wasn't in the room. Thumb brushing glass. Teeth catching her lip. I memorized the shape of her laughter and filed it under exhibits you learn to hate. I followed her at a distance once. Saw the man from the messages slide into a cafe booth and fold her hands into his like he had discovered warmth. I sat in the corner with earbuds that weren't on. She told him she needed honesty. He told her she deserved it. Honesty is a currency you spend once. She didn't look for me. I didn't need to look for more. Bureaucracy is a tide. Once it moves, you only have to keep your feet. A clerk misfiles a response because I asked 2 departments the same question with 2 different dates. A backlog turns a delay into a default. A default becomes a hold. The hold turns into a flag beside her name that bleeds into databases that were built to believe each other. She doesn't see it. She buys a dress. She posts a photo of a ring that fits too easily. She lays her phone face down and smiles for friends who think new beginnings don't owe old debts. The week before the wedding, a final letter arrives. The kind printed by a machine that doesn't know mercy. It sits in the mailbox because I get there first. She hums at the sink. I fold napkins. The venue smells like cut flowers and champagne. Her mother cries in the front row before the music even starts. I stand where I'm supposed to and practice a smile in case anyone is watching. She walks in, and the room forgets how to breathe. She takes my arm at the end of the aisle and whispers, "We made it. We did." Just not where she thought. The knock is gentle, the way people teach you to wake a child. The doors open on uniforms and clipped syllables. The vows turn brittle in the air. They read her name, then the charges. Fraud, falsifying registration, failure to appear, unpaid violations that have stacked into a sum. People only believe when it is printed in black. Suspicion of stolen plates because a set that shouldn't exist does. Someone laughs a little in the wrong place, and then stops when the handcuffs show. The music learns how to end without being told. She tries the obvious lines. This is a mistake. I can explain. I didn't know. Like a woman shaking a locked door that says pull when she needs it to say push. The officer asks her to turn around. Satin wrinkles like paper. Lace remembers it used to be thread. She looks at me over her shoulder like there's a version of me that will run to her rescue. That version died when her phone taught our ceiling how to blush. They take her through the aisle we were supposed to walk together. The cake stands tall and stupid. Layered promises no one will cut. Someone shouts her name. Someone else records it because the future needs proof. The man from the cafe is a shadow slipping out a side door. Fingernails clean, conscience cleaner. He will tell his friends later that he had no idea. He will mean it in the way people mean things that spare them. The trial is quieter than weddings, but more honest. Numbers don't raise their voices. Dates don't cry. Handwriting analysis is a choir that only sings one note. The line-drawn map of her signatures overlays itself across forms that shouldn't exist. Margins that line up like trimmed hedges. The case file is a city built overnight where nothing used to be. One violation connecting to another by streets named after all, and of course, her attorney calls them clerical errors. The judge calls them what they are. Guilty. 3 years. Probation after. Fines that whisper interest the way weeds whisper through cracks in a driveway you don't shovel. She asks to speak. She says she was overwhelmed. The court is not a person you can charm. The gavel falls like it has practice. People ask later if it was worth it. If a phone full of hearts justifies a cell full of concrete. If a $50 ticket deserves a ledger written in iron. They ask as if scale is morality. As if small knives don't cut. I don't answer. I think about the promise on the floor by the rocking table. About the way she said, "One day we'll laugh." People laugh now. Not because it's funny, but because the math is simple in a world that pretends it's complicated. All that over a parking ticket. Yes, exactly that. Because betrayal is always small at first. An unread message you pretend not to see. A lie you tell yourself so you can sleep. A fine you choose not to pay because you think gravity is a suggestion. Small things don't stay small when you feed them. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the volume on consequences and let the room hear. Nights are quiet again. The ceiling is dark. The phone doesn't glow. Somewhere a door slams at the same hour every evening, and footsteps learn a path that never changes. She used to say love is a choice. It is. So is every detail that follows.